Hey everybody, Jason Berman here, and the last 48 hours has been a wild ride for the U.S. District Attorney's Office in the Southern Tier of New York and regarding Jeffrey Berman. Now, Berman, at least to me, got onto my radar once the Epstein arrest happened. And as you know, on air, we read that indictment. We talked about the 3 Jane Does. We talked about the charges coming up against Jeffrey Epstein. And we had high hopes that justice would finally begin to be done and that Epstein and his co-conspirators would finally not only be rounded up, but have a jury trial where unspeakable crimes against children would be revealed. However, that does not seem to be the case anymore. And once again, in the last 48 hours, we've gone from Bill Barr releasing a press release saying that Jeffrey Berman was going to step down, then Jeffrey Berman hitting back, "I'm not stepping down. That's not how this works." Then the media reporting that Trump fires him, Trump denying he had anything to do with his firing, putting it back on Barr, and then Barr apparently releasing some kind of a press release saying that Trump is the one that fired Berman on his behalf and it would be immediate. We're going to go over all that. We're going to talk about this very, very odd, weird, tangled web where Jeffrey Berman comes from. We're going to talk about Maria Farmer, Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, the Jane Does, Bill Barr, and then Trump associates. But before we get there, I want to remind everybody to thumbs this video up, subscribe, share. Please consider donating. We are fully demonetized on this platform. There are a lot of people out there trying to point to alternative platforms for me to have super chats in. I know Streamlabs being one of them, but since I wouldn't be using Streamlabs web-based software, is that a possibility? If anybody knows anything about XSplit integration and some of these alternative platforms for super chats, I'm all ears. So hit me in my DMs, let me know. Support me financially if you can. Subscribe, share. Make sure you are still subscribed, and make sure to check out all my playlists, including my documentary films. All right. Let's talk Jeffrey Berman. Now, the thing about Jeffrey Berman is he worked in the U.S. State's Attorney's Office from 1990 to 1994, right? But then he has a private practice all the way up through 2018. In April of 2018, he becomes the interim United States Attorney of New York, right? But then he goes full board. Now, let's talk about this for a second. It was the NYPD that really put together this indictment on Jeffrey Epstein. And the thing is that Maria Farmer went to that NYPD about Jeffrey Epstein all the way back in 1996. Now, some people will argue, well, he wasn't in the U.S. Attorney's Office then. 1990 to 1994, he doesn't come back till 2018. By 2018, if you were not aware of who Jeffrey Epstein was and who his associates were and the allegations against him, especially in a state where he owned property, you were not paying attention. That is not an excuse whatsoever, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people, especially in the mainstream media, are pointing to the fact that Berman had gone after Trump associates, right? And some of them being his lawyer, some of them being associates of Giuliani. Now, Berman is a registered Republican. He seems to sit on the side of the establishment most of the time. But Michael Cohen was an easy get. It was an easy get. Once he was given the go-ahead to go get Cohen in these imagination land Russian investigations, right? I still see people promoting the idea that Robert Mueller and the Mueller investigation revealed Russian collusion. I mean, you must be mentally disabled right? I think BuzzFeed put out a new story this week saying, oh, there's more declassified stuff, and it says that there's more Russian collusion. No, the narrative is ridiculous. However, the powers that be did put as much pressure as they possibly could on Trump to try to get him in that seat. Why? They wanted a perjury trap. Now, I'm not saying that Berman's a bad guy. I'm not saying that Berman is a good guy. But now we have to talk about Bill Barr. You see, Bill Barr reiterated on television just last week that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Let me repeat that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. And then when he was asked about more information coming forward on that case, and he said, as to whether or not, he killed himself, I don't see anything, coming to light that would show anything otherwise. And then when being pressed about Prince Andrew, who law enforcement and supposedly the federales say they want information from, and the big headlines was that he was going to be extradited to the United States. No. Bill Barr said, no, we're not going to try to extradite. We just want information. We just want, oh, really? You want information? So this large intelligence apparatus that you've built with your alphabet agencies, whether it be the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, you can't find Ghislaine Maxwell. That doesn't make any sense to me. And there are stories even today that, she's living on the high life in some kind of a mansion, etc. We may go over those stories later on. Okay, now the two associates of Trump that were gone after, they're still in there. And again, they try to point to them to be the Russian or the Ukrainian collusion guys. It was really odd to see this kind of back and forth, and that Berman came out and outright defied Barr. Now, in that respect, I think he was right. Now, I don't know behind the scenes. I don't know whether Jeffrey Berman has commented on whether or not Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Okay? I would imagine he's going to toe that very, very political line and say whatever the establishment tells him to say. But you got to remember, Berman had a private practice for over 10 years in between the job. So I don't know who's right in this situation. Okay? I do find it suspect that he had to put this out, that he learned in a press release from the Attorney General tonight that I was stepping down as the United States Attorney. I have not resigned and have no intention of resigning my position, to which I was appointed by the judges of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. And then he goes on to talk about what the succession process actually looks like. And it's hard for me to disagree with this. And it is disturbing to me that executive actions can be taken like that and get rid of a district attorney, right? That's crazy to me. Now, if you were showing the corruption, if you were bringing him up on criminal charges, if you were pointing to specifics as to why this man needed to step down, we could start talking. Instead, you're letting the mainstream media speculate that you're basically taking out an enemy of Trump. And he may be an enemy of Trump. That may be it. I don't know enough about the behind-the-scenes stuff that's going on to tell you what's going on here, other than the fact it doesn't look like we're going to get any justice whatsoever in the Epstein case. It doesn't look like Sarah Palin is going to be arrested. It doesn't look like Ghislaine Maxwell will be brought to justice. It doesn't look like Prince Andrew is going to have to give any information whatsoever because he's part of a royal bloodline that is a protected class, the predator class, if you will, and he does what he wants. And that's scratching the surface. That's scratching the surface because we know Trump had a relationship with Epstein. Don't be in denial. But it sure seems like Clinton had more of a relationship with Epstein. And then we're not even talking about Les Wexner. We're not even talking about Jean-Luc Brunel. We're not even talking about Claude Hadid. And those are people who are just in the network of young girls and modeling when there's so much more going on here. The other thing that's odd to me is that the talks of his replacement, of Berman's replacement, are going to be a chairman of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, who has no background in this type of work. You could sit here and act like, well, he's stacking the deck against the deep state. Is he? Because Trump's done so well with stacking the deck against the deep state that he hired people like James Mad Dog Mattis, who would later stab him in the back and promote war and lie about Syria, right? And then he also appointed people like, John Bolton, who immediately I called a swamp creature. Immediately pointed out this was a neocon hell-bent for over a decade to go into North Korea and Iran, right? And now what do you got? You got the media lapping it up. Oh, he's the new media darling. Walrus Mustache Man. He's fighting Trump. You put him in there. Let me ask you something. Did John Bolton fight the deep state for you then? So do you realize that Mike Pompeo and Bill Barr probably are not there to fight the deep state for you, Donnie? And I know there are so many people out there that think that, Barr is Trump's fixer. That's a small portion of it. Barr's there to ensure that no matter what good Trump might do, or might say, or might expose, we'll attach him to people like Alan Dershowitz, who will defend him against false Ukrainian allegations, but have allegations against him that are of a pedophilic nature. And any thinking person looks at that, and they're like, wow, that's not right. That's not how we should be doing business. But when you have a cult-like mentality of red and blue and conservative and liberal and right and left, and then you have an imagination land message board psyop going on to tell you to trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan. Don't trust your eyes. Don't trust your ears. Don't trust the outward actions of others. Trust the plan. Doesn't matter how vague that plan is, if the plan even exists. Trust the plan. Whatever happened to trust no one? Verify information. So I got to tell you, this whole thing was, I almost did the video yesterday, even before, Trump supposedly fired him, and then Trump came out and said he didn't fire him. I almost went midway on this thing. I don't think we've seen the end of it. The question is, what will Jeffrey Berman say to the press? What will the press focus on? And will anybody ask Jeffrey Berman about the cases against Epstein and whether he believes Epstein killed himself or that this firing had anything to do with those cases? And again, we're not saying Jeffrey Berman is a saint here. Maria Farmer, who is going through a very, very tough battle right now with cancer, and if you can support her in any way, I encourage you to do so, does not like Berman. Feels like Berman lied about the fact that the NYPD and the FBI knew about Epstein for decades at this point. Again, you want to give Berman some of the credit, or some reasonable doubt on that, right? You could say, again, he was only in the office from 90 to 94, and then not until 2018. But when you're on that level of law, right, prosecutor, defense, when you're in those circles, people talk, right? Remember, Bill Barr himself, with Kirkland and Ellis, was one of Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers and had to talk about the possibility of recusing himself of anything Epstein. He did that openly. We covered that here. Kirkland and Ellis, look it up. So there are a lot of things at play here, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thumbs it up, subscribe, share. Remember, we're fully demonetized here. We're doing it with your help and your help alone. $5, $10, $15. Big donors need you now more than ever. Going to try to kick out the jams on this Father's Day. I want to say happy Father's Day to all those dads out there that are doing it big, spending time with your families, making sacrifices, and trying to keep that family unit together, because that's one of the most important things you can do. Unconditional love for those around you. Raising another human being with the right values and telling them to have critical thinking skills and discernment. Props to all the dads out there. Again, you can go to my playlist section here. You can check out all of my documentary films, including Shade the Motion Picture. It's right behind my head. Whoop, let's move it. There it is. Shade the Motion Picture, Invisible Empire, A New World Order, to find all very, very important films right now. And then if you want to learn about 9/11, Fabled Enemies, and Loose Change Final Cut, I want to remind people that, again, those films are for sharing. I want you to share those films. As hard as they are to find on the internet, please. You want to understand how the deep state really works? You want to understand what globalism really is? You want to understand that it doesn't have a flavor of left or right? It's not a donkey or an elephant. It is a predatory class coming after the vast majority of us based on our monetary and social status, and that's it. People got to get that through their heads. Remember to check me out on Rockfin as well, rockfin.com/Jason Bermas. And of course on Minds too. I love you guys. And I'll see you on the flip side.